Despina, she got me already. So good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone from EKOME. This is our 8th webinar from EKOME MIL webinar series under the theme Raising Media and Informational Literacy Skills in the Mediterranean, Partnerships and Projects, a joint synergy with UNESCO Media and Informational Literacy Alliance and the Mediterranean Group. This is the last webinar from round 2 under the theme, and the theme is children and digital media, forms and attitudes, and how all this is interconnected with media and information literacy. To explore this challenging, long disputed, and always up-to-date issue, we have invited three exceptional ladies, MIL powerful women, as someone commented on our Facebook. In a rather gender unbalanced approach, since we're all women today, and we will attempt to get closer to this amazing digital generation, Generation Z, and try to better understand their needs and habits. Without any further ado, I would like to welcome Sherri Culver from USA, Philadelphia. Sherri is Vice Chair of the International Steering Committee of UNESCO MIL Alliance, Associate Professor at Klein College of Media and Communication, and also Director of the Center for Media and Information Literacy, dealing in a multidisciplinary approach on children's media and media literacy. And just one among her many successful projects is Kids Talk Media podcast series. Hello, Sherri. We're very glad and honored to have you with us today.
Thank you for that lovely introduction.
Next, we have Betty Tsakarestou from Greece. She is professor at Panteion University, Department of Communication, Media and Culture, and director of the very active indeed AD and PR lab laboratory. And Betty and I have met in the early zeros many years ago with the then innovative Media Smarts program, which was a TV commercial literacy project for children. Hi, Betty. Also thrilled to have you with us today.
Hello, Irene. I'm really honored and delighted to join the conversation. And I hope that we will have some nice insights to share with everyone.
Yes, definitely. And then we have Ivana Jakobović, Alpeza from Croatia. Croatia is one of our newest members in the Mediterranean group. And Ivana is head of Sedmi continent at Kids Meet Art, which deals with cinematography and is aimed at elementary school children and kindergartens. She's also co-founder of the organization Children Meet Art, and she has done an impressive work for introducing visual arts to children with sight and or hearing impairment, children in hospitals, and children with limited access to cultural contents. So we're really looking forward to your point of view, Ivana.
Hi, Irene, and how both ladies. Great to be with you this evening.
Thank you so much for accepting our invitation. All the guest speakers are members of our big global community of UNESCO MIL Alliance, and we couldn't be more happier than that. Let me just add some technical details that the webinar will also be available from YouTube of EKOME under the EKOME MIL webinar series. And our dear caller, Despina Labada, will be the behind the scenes magic hand for all your Q&As, for your chat queries at the end of the discussion, and we will try to address as many as we can. And please remember to mute your microphone while not speaking.
So just a quick hi from me too before I disappear from your screens. Have a lovely webinar. You won't be bothered by me. I will just do the behind the scenes stuff so that Irene is free to focus on your discussion. Very nice to meet everyone. And I hope we all have a fruitful discussion.
Thank you, Despina. And we may not see her, but she's always present and giving a reassuring hand. So I would also like to thank all the participants coming from all over the globe today and to attend and get inspired by this webinar on this very hot topic. So off we go. Let me start with the first question. Complex relationship between children and the media has always been on the spotlight, not only for media researchers, but also for media professionals and the creative industry. Since youth consist #1 target group in our consumer society. They are the new prosumers, and their interests, passions, habits, attitudes are going through the constant lens of the new social media industries and their internet service providers. So they're also the ambassadors of Generation Z, born between 1997 and 2012, a generation that tends to share common foundation characteristics related to the present social, economic, and political climates during their formative childhood years. So Generation Z kids are characterized as our first real digital natives, to mention Prensky, because they are the native speakers of this new generation, whereas adults and parents are all digital immigrants in this new era. Being all of you on the academic and practical side at the same time, how would you identify Generation Z changing behavioral patterns in terms of interacting with the new media? Let me start with Sherri.
Thank you, Irene. Wow, it's a big topic with so many different elements to it. I'll touch on three changes things that I think are unique to this group of young people that are coming up. The first one is about their relationship with influencers. I think that this is likely going to come up in many of the different topics related to this that we talk about today. That, when I was a child, my biggest connection to media was watching like cartoons and watching half-hour television programs. Now, the greatest place we are likely to find young people is on social media, connected to specific influencers, people that they are connected to and they like, and they feel an affinity toward, and they trust, which is a big part of that relationship. So I'm going to keep this brief, but that would be one, is that relationship with influencers. The second is their relationship with privacy. I've actually struggled with really trying to explain to my college students, as well as to younger people, why they should care about their privacy. They really connect much of the wonderful relationships and the joy they have with media with not having privacy, right? That they have given up their privacy and data about themselves for access to social media and to many other things. And so their relationship with privacy is very different. And I think certainly in terms of changing attitudes, very different than my generation, or even people younger than myself, who grew up feeling that my information was private, I should keep it private. And we now live in a time when the exact opposite is true. And the third that I'll just mention is in studying children and media, we have very often relied on this notion of amount of time. How much time are they spending watching television? How much time are they spending on social media? And even guidelines that we gave to parents were often very time oriented. But we've entered into a zone, and this has been written about recently, that's referred to as constancy. So we don't really have any part of our day, and certainly young people don't have any part of their day when they're not connected to media. So that could be a phone, a television, some digital reader of some sort, going on a computer, their laptop. I mean, right, any number of things, a book, even movies, music, all of that. But even really thinking about digital media and online media, takes up a major portion of is threaded through a major portion of their waking hours. And so just conversations about turn it off, don't listen to it then, don't watch it now, you've had enough, that don't really resonate as much with young people, because their whole approach to media is that it is something that is, it's almost like a part of their person. And that is how they connect with it. So I think those are three big differences, and I'll leave my answer at that.
Thank you so much, Sherri. I couldn't agree more. I mean, while the millennium generation was supposed to be the digital pioneers, these are the real digital natives. They are born in front of a screen, and from the moment they are in the hospital, from the very first meeting they are born, we have all witnessed photos and videos from proud parents. And then we have the other serious dimension, how much exposure is too much. So there are so many complex issues that deal with their digital identity. So let me move with Betty. Hi, Betty.
Hi. Excuse me. So I would like to, first of all, to add to what Sherri has already said. First of all, I think the most important issue is whom I trust. And I think this is at the core of Generation Z, young citizens, how they relate to the world. And the digital platforms and the digital media, as you've said, it's not a different universe, but it is where they live, where they create, where they aspire to create a future, and also how they perceive themselves as citizens, local or global citizens. And one element that really is striking to me is that even though sometimes us as, let's say, senior adults or educators or, let's say, opinion shapers, actually what I hear from them, and also what research tells us, first of all, they want to own the narrative. They want to own the conversation. So the first and most important thing for them is authorship, ownership and curation of the conversation. So the key element is the conversation, who owns, who curates the conversation. And through the digital platforms, through social media, but also through encrypted messaging apps, this is my latest passion to explore, is that they're shaping the conversation. So the interaction for them and co-shaping the conversation is, the narrative is the number one concern and priority for them. And this is a fine line between trust and non-trust. So even when we try to tell them, you know, be careful, so advocating a fear narrative around digital and social or Web3 or metaverse right now, actually what we are, the signal that we are projecting to them is that we are the ones that they should be fearful of. We are the establishment that tries to control them and their conversation and understanding. So this idea is really illuminating for me. And I would like to stop it here and to continue the conversation with all of you.
Certainly, we most certainly will. So Ivanka, do you see any behavioral patterns? I'm sure you have.
I will really be really, truly, honestly a practitioner in this situation among you, because not that I'm coming from a practitioner background, meaning I'm not academic and I run programs for children, create, design and implement, but my children are 13 and 17. So if we think about Gen Z, these are kids from 10 to 25, if we are talking about them at the moment. So my kids are those kids. And preparing for today's meeting, because this is not really something which I do every day, so I had to really prepare. So apology if something will be misinterpreted, but I checked all the things with them and I combined everything what I have, what have you said and what I have read. And it's really one cross one. It's really so easy to define them. So the things I would like to accompany yours remarks would be that they are very much aware about environment. So they are very conscious, and they, in sense of choosing companies or products, they really try to see who is eco-friendly and use sustainable practices. So that's to them, that's very important. I don't know if Greta did a part of her job and influenced them, or all other media, but that's the kind of successful and good practice which they accept. Another thing for me is a little bit terrifying, how brands and businesses and influencers target them on all insights and all the statistics. So they see them very soon to be until 2030, the majority of the workforce in the world, or 30 to 50% together with millennials, and they will have a power. They will be on leading positions or decision-making positions, and they are really think that that world won't change up to them. I mean, the world have to change up to them, not that we can expect that they will change up to us, X generation, or even older. So that's something which we have all to have in mind, because they're like, you know, they're on a, that just a target. I have sometimes a feeling when I read the statistics. Something else which I have found interesting, it's not something which my kids approved me, but it's mental health ramifications. They are very much aware how much they're spending on in online world causes their anxieties, chronic stress, depression, even when they're not on internet or on social media, they feel an anxiety because they think something is trending and something important is happening over there, and their influencer is publishing something very important and they are not part of that. So sense of community very, very strong. So that's something that we have to have in mind. And how our Gen Z will look in the future, that's something very interesting. And I already hear that from my friends or parents who have a little bit older kids from States, that they desire better work-life balance than generation before, and they resign, and they don't want to be part of the, you know, huge companies, to work 12 hours a day, to be part of some huge great idea, because they have their own idea how they want to spend their life. And I think they're a more woke world, part of the more woke world in the next future. These are the things that I like to emphasize.
Thank you so much, Ivana. And I think that we can only be hopeful and optimistic for this generation, Shed, because there's a lot of public discussion going on about do they actually think different, and has all this interaction with social media from early preschool age is damaging their ability to think critically. So there's a huge public discourse on that. And I would like to pose on that question that do they actually think different? Well, yes and no. According to traditional cognitive development theories and neuroscientists, kids' brain is being developed based on the speed and the amount of stimuli they receive. So in the digital age today, what is needed is to reboot, to reprogram their brain, or they do it they themselves. They reprogram their brain and to adjust it to the digital stimuli, a procedure that is being done spontaneously by them. So they know how to adapt to the challenges. And for me, a great challenge is all this content, the digital content that they receive. How do they use it to their own benefit from a creative point of view? I mean, educators today, they use these traditional old school approaches, to engage with the students, whereas they can also use more creatively digital media and digital pathways in an active, fun way, and making all the student community to question them, to critically approach them, and use it also as an advanced educational tool. And I think that the greatest challenge for us adults is how to better familiarize with these kids, these media habits they have, to get closer to them, taking into account their own preferences, their own experience in the digital world. And this goes with the main realization that every platform has its own meaning, its own operational code, and that every user should be aware of. And this is where the media information literacy paradigm is being born. And Ivanka, you talked about the branded identities, which is a very important issue of children's media presence today, and at the time where companies like Facebook, Microsoft are rushing to sell us, the new metaverse, children and youth have already merged into this digital reality and physical worlds. And I would like just to close with the main question set by a current open-air exhibition here in Athens. It's called Plasmata, Bodies, Dreams, and Data Now by Onassis Foundation. STEGI, they are also a member of the Mediterranean group of UNESCO MIL Alliance. They're posing the question, are these hybrid worlds here to change or replace physical reality as we know it? Or are these just instances of short-lived pleasure and gratification? And may I also add, what is the role of Generation Z in this blended reality? Because it is clear that they are the main target group of this blended hybrid reality, but they can also discover their own paths, and we can only learn so much from them. So let me move with the second question. It's about reflecting on these patterns that we have mentioned already. Where do you see media and information literacy in terms of acquiring, developing, enlarging skills in the social media universe? Are children aware of the mechanisms required to build a resilient attitude? Do you have any examples from your best practices, good practices, projects that you are involved with, and you see this link, this interconnection of Generation Z and media and information literacy? Let me start with Sherri, because you have evidence-based approach through your podcast and many other projects.
Thank you, Irene. I got you thinking, there's so many interesting elements of this. When we think about what do children know, and you're really asking, right, what do they understand media literacy? Do they understand even the idea of thinking critically about media? My experience has been that it's a bit like Swiss cheese. So I think of Swiss cheese, right? It has nice thick cheese, but it has big holes in it. So I'll talk to people, to young people on the podcast, or talk to college students, talk to my daughter who's also Gen Z. And there's a deep understanding about some things, and then no understanding about other parts of it. So I think many of them have grown up from early elementary. They have had teachers and parents saying to them, don't share your password, and don't let anybody know your personal data. They sort of understand, whether they agree or not. They've heard that quite a bit. They have a basic understanding of how influential it can be, and many of them have experienced cyberbullying, so they have some understanding of that. But what I would put inside, like the business aspect of it, they don't understand at all, and that's highly influential. So how are these companies making money? How are they using data to make money? And what does that really mean for you as a user? I think they don't understand that connection at all. And so if an interesting question to a young person is, what do you like to do online? And they're going to name something that they spend $0 or euros on. And then, well, companies don't exist to not make money. Companies exist to make money. How is this company making money? They have to be making money somehow. And just following that thread, that seems to me to be a giant hole. They don't really understand that aspect. So in some ways, especially, the whole term digital natives, I think can lead some folks to misunderstand what young people might understand and what they don't. Yes, they have grown up with digital media. Yes, it's very fluid in their lives, organic in the way they get information, the way they socialize, but they're not necessarily bringing that critical thinking to their media consumption. And they're not going to do that unless we help them to learn how to do it. So that has to come from educators, from parents, from the media industry itself, from the government. I mean, everybody together has to be making that clear that we need to be reflecting. I mean, everybody does, but certainly if we could get children to do it at a young age, they would grow up with that skill, and that would be key. So I think that notion of not being, as adults, not being swayed to think that high use of media means high understanding of media or MIL skills. It's not necessarily, it's not the same thing. And you can be very skilled at operating and creating content and not be particularly skilled in MIL. So I think that it really has to be explicit.
Yes, thank you, Sherri. Ivanka, let's.
Yeah, very interesting.
You have some projects developed in your organization that combine media literacy and children's well-being. So we're very eager to hear more on your actions.
Well, I would say today I feel I'm very, very conservative. That all my approaches have to go under reconciliation and really to deeply think about everything. I have a feeling that we all act like we are knowing what is happening, how things are developing. But then I have a feeling that we don't know. And what are going to be next steps. So if we are going to act, I think that what we are doing and what we all need to do is to work in really interdisciplinary teams, which can combine all sorts of perspectives for such a serious topic. And I think that necessary part of our teams should be Z generation experts and millennials experts, because they just think about things around us on a different way. And maybe with our experience and knowledge that we have, they can help us to create policies, strategies, quality programs, quality content, but if we are going to do it by ourselves, not consulting them, and not to be co-curating, co-creating, I think that there is going to be a big gap between these generations and these approaches. I have a very recently interesting insight in a project which is very well spread in States. Sherri will probably know about Marianne Wolf, maybe others, and her trying not to be afraid of what is digital world and kids in digital world will bring, but to accompany and to combine both from both worlds. What does she mean upon that? She means that we have to develop a bilingual brain in our children, starting from very, very, very early age, meaning 6 months, to develop them pre-literate skills. So I will come to Gen Z. I didn't lose myself. Just to make them, just to start to develop their pre-literal skills, which will help them to be critical, to develop both reading skills, skimming, and deeply dive into the reading as a foundation of any cognitive and mental or whatever development of the child. So up to 5 years, storytelling, board books, very old-fashioned, shared parents reading, focus on books. And then from 5 to 12, introduce quality digital content. And I think we as adults and policymakers are responsible to help them to find on internet quality digital content. And then from 12 and up, they will have tools to switch different gender texts, different switching, from skimming, deeply diving into text and creating another text, which is another value and skill that they have to have in nowadays. So I don't know if I have answered you, Irene. I went very broadly.
It's very important to start that from a very early preschool age, because it's about cultivating, their very primitive early media habits that they will be using for the rest of their lives. So, I mean, having the basic literacy skills is, of course, number one step, and it's important, as you said, not only for the educators, but for the parents themselves to have an active role into that. Betty, where do you see the merge between media information literacy and children's excessive or not media use today?
So let me focus on Gen Z, let's say students I'm interacting with between the age of 20 to 22, 23. So as we are part of a Department of Communication and Media, and also the Advertising PR Lab, actually we're interacting a lot with companies and brands and digital publishers. And sometimes through our collaborations, sometimes I think that there is a misunderstanding how we approach the corporate world or the branding companies. I would say, first of all, that the leading people in those companies and brands are actually having the same questions as we are dealing with them today. They are actually trying to avoid to, let's say, manipulate citizens at whatever age they are, of course, kids underage or young adults or the adults. Actually, they have a clear focus how they can contribute to the issues of critical media interaction, how the brands will not be part of the issues of misinformation or disinformation. They try somehow to educate first the people who are working for them and also our students, how the algorithms, for example, are working, what it means to have a performance approach, actually how you try to target or micro-target through brands and digital content users, and what are the limits, what privacy issues are, how serious they are. So I would say, if we start with the assumption that brands in corporate world are really there to be the malign actors. I think this is a really misconception, at least for the leading brands and the leading companies. This is not the case. Actually, this Media Smart program back in the series when we're talking, that was an initiative from the advertisers and the advertising companies. So I think what is interesting with the Generation Z people, and when they're interacting with digital media owners, publishers, branding companies, corporate world, media people or educators, is first of all, they want to be acknowledged that they understand the game. They are quite, they have a well-informed, at least at this age, how about at least the algorithms are. They have explored by themselves the metaverse, let's say, question or meta world. And what they really care about is how I can shape it as well, how I can interact and how we can learn together what the future might be. So they are more interested about questions, what is, what might be, how we can envision our future, what are the challenges, and they want to create solutions. So they want to innovate by creating their own solutions. So our programs, our educational programs and training is to introduce them open space for challenges. First of all, to shape the challenge, not to tell them what the challenge is. So the discovery of the challenges, the mapping of the challenges, and then create diverse groups where they try to find some answers, some solutions. At the core of this is how we shape the conversation, how we enable through conversations the trust, because storytelling is part of how we shape the conversation. So I would say that the content is not really the king in many ways. Even from the social media early days, we were saying context is the king. I would say conversation is probably the king. And this is where we have the real challenge, how we keep people in conversation, to interact with each other and be able to question their attitudes, to move and to test possible answers and test the truth. And I think this is how we are doing. So this is through this kind of projects where we don't teach them, we teach each other how we can find answers is one approach. It's playful, experimental, co-creative, and we start with open questions, not with certainties. So this is my approach with Gen Z, current and future communicators.
Yes, future communication, the future's workforce. So yes. Sherri wanted to add something.
It is entirely possible that my experience with brands is just different because of being in the US, but I think that even in the best case scenario of a brand, be that brand a media company, a Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, or be it a brand like The Gap or a global retail brand, I do believe that large media companies and technology companies very often would prefer not to mislead. They would prefer not to have particularly young people feel manipulated by their content. However, the bottom line is they need to make money, and they are not going to implement something that is going to hurt their bottom line. And I think that that's a really important component. Even if they're doing something, and I work with them sometimes, but even if they're doing something generous for media, for MIL, education, they would not do something that would hurt their bottom line. And so I think that's just a balance we have to hold. I think media companies should be involved in this discussion. I'm not suggesting, because there are people that feel that we shouldn't deal with them at all. I don't feel that way. I feel like they need to be at the table. We should have discussions. They should put money into MIL programs. But if I said to a particular social media company, the way to make your space more protected to children is to do this, and that suggestion meant that millions of children would not be on the site, they would not implement that. And YouTube is the #1 example of that right now. We know that that's where young people, and particularly I'm talking about people under 18 at this point, but that is their go-to place online. They like being on YouTube. And we know, and I have story after story from the conversations I have on Kids Talk Media, the podcast, about times when they have gone online to look for something on YouTube and have seen something they didn't want to see, something that by accident was revealed to them. There are many ways that YouTube could make sure that doesn't happen, but they're not willing to do that. Instead, what they did is they created YouTube Kids, which is for young children, so that doesn't help our teens. But they're not willing to do certain tagging or other things that would actually help your ability to only find the content that's appropriate for you, because it would change their advertising model. So I just think I just want to balance that knowledge. There are things that media companies are willing to do, and there are things they are not willing to do. And we as users, and particularly the young people in our lives, need to understand what is implied by those choices that company makes. They are making choices. I guess that's the bottom line.
Yes, indeed they are. And kids content, I'm glad that we have moved to kids content, because it is also part of media and information literacy. It's the third strand about creating, co-creating, sharing media content for the new users, user-generated content. So it has been on the regulatory dispute also very vividly the past years, and here in Europe with the review of the Audiovisual Media Service Directive, that is being implemented in Greek law and other law systems around Europe. There are amendments, there are responsibilities for internet service providers for non-linear and on-demand services, such as video sharing platforms and YouTube, to make sure that they offer quality kids content, and they are protecting minors from harmful content. And another question is that they haven't dealt already, and that's why YouTube created YouTube Kids, is that they should be dealing with other technical issues like labeling content, age verification, content classification in a video sharing platform such as YouTube, but they haven't done that. So that's why they created some hybrid brands underneath. I'm very glad that we're talking about children's media content, because it concerns children as users, but brands and companies, as you also mentioned. What do you see are the challenges and the learning potential for Generation Z in terms of the media content, bearing in mind that now we're talking about the metaverse, the hybrid realities, and can it be used effectively in the classroom? Can it have a beneficial impact in terms of learning and pedagogy, all this children's media content? What is your opinion on it? Let me start with Betty.
If I want to continue a little bit this line of thinking I was sharing before.
And I'm also sorry, I'm also glad that we have some disagreement and arguments, because
I know.
The concept of these webinars are, to reflect and get inspired.
To reflect,
so
I want to continue with that.
I'm really glad
I think
about that.
I would like to talk about this, addressing two different, let's say, learners group. The first is the Gen Z, but the senior ones, like the students, okay, the university students, and I would like to differentiate them from the school year, I mean, the 10-year-old and so on. So if we go, in both cases, what I would say is that the protection approach to protect, I have been holding this opinion for at least more than a decade, even through the European Union media experts group. That there was this discussion if we have to go to protect people or how we want to engage them as users and creators. And
inoculation versus creation.
Yes,
and
yes.
free will.
So I keep this line that people, even at the younger age and more as adults and academic, community, young people, I think what is critical for them is that the learning happens within a social milieu, social context, through interactions and through actually being part of creating something. This creative process is actually the critical thinking process, because the critical thinking, we cannot separate it from trying to build something or to deconstruct something or to test the validity or non-validity of something. And I think this idea of literacy is the idea of first asking questions, be in position to discuss, to create something with others, to explore what we have done here, what the scenarios, the good scenarios, what might go wrong, and continue in that process, which is more inquisitive, more scientific as a process, as a model, and less as a model that we teach them what is the right and what is the wrong, or what are the dangers. I think that fires back, and we can see that all the time, that fires back. So this is the one approach. So for the university students specifically, I think that at the same time, more of them are already part of the professional world. So we call them students, but at the same time, they have positions in companies, in NGOs, at state organizations, and so on. So at the same time, they have 2 or 3 hats, or they have their own gig thing, they have their own startup, their own little NGO, and they try to make the world better. So their approach is, we are the generation S. What's generation S, not Z? We are the generation sustainability. So they embrace that idea of sustainability. We are better than the previous generations. Why? Because we have asked critical questions regarding the consumption style, the media style, and everything. And we are there to test some solutions. And here are examples and what are trying to do. So that's why I say the critical thing for them is how we can keep, as I said before, the conversation going, and not to exclude each other in tribes. So the tribal way of thinking is one problem. It's not so much the digital world, it's the tribal world. It's the resurgence, the re-emergence of the tribes, the medieval tribes, the closed worlds that they find now their new homes on the encrypted silent worlds of closed apps. I think that's for me the major challenge. Know what happens so much on YouTube, because YouTube is on the public sphere. What are the new hybrid worlds of in between private and public spheres, and the messaging chat, the Viber, the Telegram, the WhatsApp, the WeChat, whatever, the suites are for me the laboratories of non-conversation, actually, the tribal words that actually are preparing and are shaping the public conversation. And that is a project I would like to share that was a part of a media information literacy project, the room where it happens, that we ran a year ago with the Greek and Indian partners, colleagues, and students. And the question is how we can shape the conversation within the encrypted worlds, and how those are the laboratories that are changing the public sphere. So my focus will be there, because is where the money goes to the closed worlds. And this is, I have more concerns, because at some point the public sphere, we can criticize, we can create a new regulations, we can regulate a little bit or invite people. What happens in the non-regulated tribal worlds? This is where I have the major curiosity and challenge right now. And we can see that since the last 2-3 years, the closed apps, the encrypted conversations are the major challenge. This is what I wanted to share with you.
that's a very interesting dimension that you're giving us, Betty, and thank you so much for that. Do you have a link that you can share maybe on the chat on this joint project?
Yes, I can share it later.
It's always a step forward to our discussion today. Ivanka? What?
Yeah, I'm thinking all the time, what would happen if policymakers, ministries, educators on high level or lower level would invest that much time and that much money as big brands are investing in discovering the way behaviors and forms and attitudes about our Gen Z. And if we would implement that in creating programs and our approaches, I think that it would be tremendous change, and that way could help a lot young people. That's why I said in the previous question, always include in teams younger generations, Z generation, millennials, and for sure, I will use all these statistics and data that I got preparing for this for our acquaintance here. Yeah.
Yep, we also keep that in mind, the marriage between old and new generation. It's a key point in our discussion. I have taken down some notes. We have also some interesting questions that we'll revisit at the end of our discussion. But I have also put down some notes with regards to quality kids content, because it is also a matter upon question today. If we want to offer quality content for kids, we have to create the need for it. So we have all to work towards this beneficial dimension for children, for youth, for Gen Z, in the same way as the Apple pioneer Steve Jobs once thought before launching his new media products, commercial products. I mean, he used to say that some people say, give the customers what they want, but that's not my approach. He said, our job is to figure out what they're going to want. They're going to think that they want before they actually do. In the same way as Henry Ford once said, if I had asked customers what they wanted, they would have told me a faster car. So you get the message. It's creating the demand for a better content for kids. It has to be in line with their own experiences and preferences. And on that premise is where I also see the merge with media and information literacy skills, because if we do that from a very early stage of life, then we can hope to find this screen-wise viewer that we have been discussing also with Despina Labada during Fest of Fest some years ago. So this screen-wise viewer that reflects and through visual imagery on his own media reality, his own media identity, and his own social development. So I think that it's also another thing that Betty mentioned, that it's interesting that they mentioned with the brands that they are not sure what they're going to find each time. I mean, they are in line with the students' preferences, as you mentioned, Betty. So it's important, because I think that constantly having under the microscope all kids' new media habits, and they're trying to create more needs for them, more media, digital-oriented needs for them. And sometimes they do not know how to balance between the good and the bad content. And this is where all the problem arise. I don't know if you have any. Yes, Sherri.
Yeah, I mean, some of these things come together in an interesting way. I think, Betty, your point about the tribes is such an interesting one. And, you know, what I was thinking about while you were talking was that developmentally, we talk about children wanting to, you know, helping them to find their identity and discover who they are and what's important to them, which really means helping, you discovering your tribe. And yet we've created, or not we, but there is now a social media or a digital sphere where once you think you have found that tribe, there's no incentive to go anywhere else. So you find that tribe and they're affirming something that you feel deeply about yourself at a young enough age that it can be so influential. It's sort of an interesting balance between wanting their lives to be open enough that they're still exploring, they're still looking at differing opinions and different perspectives. But on the other hand, the need to find your tribe and to have that provide not only your self-identity, but self-esteem comes from that as well. And the way in which the online world feeds into that is so deep.
Well, I would like to continue the conversation, which is really an interesting point. Now, let's consider this idea about tribes and open society or cosmopolitan society. I think that we are at a turning point. I mean, in a more general sense. I think in the zeros, in the 90s, even the 80s, actually we were celebrating the open societies, the cosmopolitan societies. And especially in the 90s, this idea of tribe, it was more like lifestyle tribe, that all different lifestyles can coexist, in a more graceful way. Everyone has their own place, everyone can have their own style, and no one really cares about live and let them live approach. What has happened the past few years is there is a change of, I would say, intellectual paradigm, also a sentiment, a more general sentiment paradigm. But actually now the different identities and tribes are consolidating into closed systems that really are very much fragile, very much annoyed by what is different. And it's this inconsistency in an era that we're talking about, diversity and inclusivity. Even this agenda of diversity and inclusivity is really clashing, because the people who are advocating about those, I would say, values and ideas, at the same time, they are talking about closed identities and closed approaches that are not really tolerating anyone else. Now, this is the intellectual environment when we're talking even about media information literacy, because the challenges we have to deal with sometimes is not so much if I only to fact check or how I can critically read something. The thing is that we are reading critically something and we understand in a such classing different way what is the content, what is at stake, what is the challenging thing, because I belong in tribe A and you belong to tribe B, and we cannot co-create a common ground to hold the conversation going. And I think, for me, this idea of critical approach to think is how you enable the people to open up again the possibilities to each other, to explore and question things. Because now we have become closed systems, mentally, culturally, I think. And I think for me, this is a critical issue right now. And that's why sometimes, even I would say, the methodologies and the tools we have, this is how you can learn to fact check. Great. This is how you can discuss ABCD as digital media information literate person. And then you understand at some point that the audience or the people you have in the class, in the university or somewhere else, all those people are not the same people. They are not the same cohort at all. They split into different tribes, and the whole conversation collapses because they fight. And for me, that's why I'm trying to describe a situation where sometimes the tools, they have as, how I say, a hypothesis that they can apply it in a universal way, and people, once they can fact check, they will agree. No, they don't. They don't agree what is the fact. They don't. So it's true. So this is where is the real challenge to me.
Yes, we need to find a more fluid situation among these different, like the filter bubbles, you know.
I mean, I don't know how we will succeed in that if they spend 80% time on following their influencers, and algorithm is giving them all the time the same way of thinking and same group of the people. So it's not going to be easy.
I do think, though, that not to oversimplify, but not that MIL solves every ill, but I do think if we were helping young people from the earliest age, right? So birth to death. I mean, if we were having media and information literacy conversations and talking about basic understandings and asking questions about your media, and think, you know, if that was just a part of how we interact with media, it would help. I mean, we don't help people to do that nearly enough. And so just even an awareness of Betty, what you're talking, like just having an awareness of some of these things would allow people to even have conversations about it in a different way, which is difficult to have presently because people don't really understand how the media is created, how that tribalism can happen through social media. Like those basic understanding is not there.
Yes. Yes, I totally agree. That's why also UNESCO approaches as an umbrella term that has to do with behaviors, with the basic cognitive skills and advanced filtering and content management skills. It's tricky and challenging. And it's all about the context, as Betty also suggested. It's about the context. I mean, it's the communication context that changes from the past years to these years to the metaverse years. It's the platform that changes, but the communication context is there. The need for communicating, the need for belonging to the same group is sometimes stronger than the need to interact with the other bubbles. And so it's the medium, the channel, the mediator per se that changes. The need for communication is the same. And I would also like to add the media empowerment issue, because if you're able to communicate and to think out of your comfort zone, your filter bubble, your own tribal zone, then in a more proactive level, you will advance your media autonomy. You will be better equipped against the malcontent, the risks online. You will be empowered and become a truly digital citizen today. So you will be able to self-express and also act in a more proactive and beneficial way. So, and I think that the challenge is that the youth generation, Gen Z, they feel very confident and secure where they are today because they are the digital natives, because they are born in line with the media. They have created their own bubbles, their own tribes. That's an excellent paradigm, Betty. And they said, we don't need to look what the others are doing. We're fine. We have our own groups of friends here. And from this isolation is where all the problem arises. So we have some interesting questions at the chat. So let me ask you, what do you see as the potentials for the future in terms of engaging media content and Generation Z? I mean, here at EKOME, from my point of view, because we're trying to work in a multidisciplinary approach also on media literacy and kids content in terms of the creative industry, the development, and the educational aspect at the same time. Our challenge is how to explore the potentials of the digital archives, or the visual digital archives, for educational use. This is a content, and as part of the audiovisual and cultural heritage and digital humanity. So how to use media content in terms of the digital humanities educational aspect. From a practical approach, how to bond closely with kids, with these new tribes, and how to explore together educational challenges and listen to them, listen to their own suggestions on how they want a new revolutionary form of pedagogy, and just to shift away a bit from the old traditional literacy methodologies. And one last thing is that children production, quality production content is very low, especially in the EU. And of course, it makes sense. It has to compete the large US tycoons, streaming platforms. So the key is diversity. We need to have a diversity in terms of children's media content. We need on that same page to offer state aid incentives and motivation for the creation of kids programming, such as the cash rebate scheme of EKOME and other countries, such as kids content competitions, awards, pitching sessions for good quality media content, and youth-oriented activities. And one last thing, according to many psychological experience, and please tell me if you agree with me, they talk about ADD disorder today. So kids, we have read that kids do not always lack specific attention when it comes to being present in a digital environment. They're very well acquainted with it, with the content, and they can stay focused for a longer time, for longer periods. Also on games related content. So it is when trying to teach them new learning outlets with old school methods, as I mentioned, that the lack of attention appears. And it makes sense to some extent because they have learned to act fast forward in our society and find it hard to slow down when it comes to traditional teaching. Sometimes they tell us, the students, that I'm bored at school when, you know, they don't use digital media content in a creative way, whereas there are abundance potential to that. So I don't know what's your, because there's a lot of talk about ADD disorder, and I don't think it's always a kind of a mental health. Also, Rosemary mentioned something that we can revisit later. Your thoughts, your challenges?
Well, I want to preface this by saying I am not a doctor, and
we don't want to move into
giving some medical advice here, but we don't give. I'm reluctant to fully believe that young people or Gen Z, that they are not capable of slowing down. I think they are entirely capable of slowing down. We give them no opportunity to slow down. We as adults over-program their lives, particularly in the United States, that is true. We have pushed young people to get jobs earlier and earlier, to worry about college earlier and earlier, to have worries. And I forget who mentioned about mental health issues. We've watched that grow in many different environments, particularly since COVID. So the idea that we would give kids time to just play, and I don't mean play like little kid play, I mean whatever it is that they, you know, just sort of downtime, and help them to do those things, sometimes online, sometimes not online, that would give them options of the ways in which they can interact with others. If every time, you know, it's not surprising that anyone feels completely attracted by social media or by the online world, when basically the online world is someone in front of you going, watch, 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 watch. And every time you turn your head, it goes, watch, 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 watch. Of course, anybody's going to keep watching that. So if we as adults have to help provide opportunities. You know, I will bet that Ivanka has stories of activities they have done that with her youth, where maybe even technology wasn't involved at all, and they were completely engaged. It's not. I think we have to be careful of assuming that it's only either the fault or the answer through digital media. You know, kids are kids. They like to play in whatever way is going to be fun to play in. I don't know. I don't want to oversimplify, but I do feel that way.
Yes.
Somebody argue with me.
Oh, I cannot argue with you. I can only agree with you. But the thing is that we really have to reshape old pedagogy and really to take in consideration how engaging content is when we are approaching to kids. And we really try to do that, for example, in our project in hospitals, which is really focused with the sense and with the deepness. In 6 different countries in Europe, we are trying to check what kind of approaches go where well, and we will know our results after 2 years, because we got financing for the 4th time from the European Creative Europe, which is quite success, and I think they really think this is necessary. And what we are doing with kids, especially during this COVID time, we had to really immediately reshape. Before COVID, we were coming to the hospital. We went with all the activities in presence, and we thought, okay, what are we going to do now? So we decided, to be even one-to-one with kids online before the movie, talking with film critic after the movie. So introduction, communicating after the movie. So they knew there is a Zoom link they can, catch and spend Thursday evening watching some good or less good movie, but somebody will explain us why this film is a good one or quality one. We introduced to all the films film critic introduction filmed in advance, so they could watch that. We have sent them the packages for stop animation with a personal note. So these were the things that really tackled them. So the next thing that we are going to do is research with the Italians, with Università di Cattolica, where we will see what activities in this vulnerable situation works, and how our approach helps treated kids in hospitals, how art actually helps them. So we will see. But the things are working. I mean,
that's a positive aspect, and we should keep that. And we're also interested in seeing how this will evolve, and you're using what are the assessment methodology that you are using. What is the assessment methodology that you're using? It is interesting to see how you interact with kids on that level. So I don't know if you have anything else to add. There are some questions at the chat, from one colleague, one participant that says that YouTube is a great challenge, and unfortunately the introduction of YouTube Kids does not deal with issues relating to protecting children online. True. It is even worse in communities whereby parents do not know how to operate smartphones, and children take on the responsibility of setting up social media accounts for themselves. I mean, it happens because, we're talking about media literacy, and it means different things in developing countries and Western developed countries. So some countries and regions are talking about basic access skills and leaving the critical component far behind. Yes, Sherri. There is a problem with your screen. You're back with us.
Okay, sorry about that. I think about the oh goodness, lost my train of thought that we were talking about. Completely lost it. Oh, it was a very important point. It will come back to me.
It's okay.
you had,
It can come back. Don't worry, don't worry. I have another question from Rosemary Smith. Thank you, Rosemary. We're trying. She says that we rock. And she has learned so many things from us today. So even if we demonstrate the dangers providing kids with media literacy tools, what can we do to actually get them to make changes in their lives for the better? Incorporate online mental health care. Some of the kids who have watched Trust Me documentary or who have had media and information literacy projects in the school say that they recognize they're being targeted and manipulated. They know that their privacy is being violated, but the draw is that strong. So it relates to what Sherri and everyone has been talking about, the lure, you know, to be involved and constantly engaged and overcoming. There is, yes.
Yeah, I mean, this kind of connects. I remembered what I was going to say, which is that when we think about, you know, MIL skills, and we're focusing on Gen Z, but the parents and the educators that Gen Z is coming in contact with also need to have those MIL skills. So if we're thinking about how those things really develop, and, you know, the younger the person, the more likely the parent is having an impact on that. Mm-hmm. But the educators are there, you know, are present. So there are other people in that person's life that are modeling those methods for them. And it relates to Rosemary's point about, just reading about that they know that they've been targeted, they don't know that they're being manipulated. So I think the balance that I'm seeing with my college, my university students, is on the one hand, building those MIL skills, and on the other hand, not destroying their trust in the fact that there are good people doing good work. There are reputable news organizations. Not everyone is out to do something horrible to you. And that when they end up in an online environment where that's all they're seeing, they can sometimes feel like that. So I do think as educators, we have a responsibility to help them build the skill while also like keeping their faith in mankind. Like it you know, most people are, let me say that another way. There are trustworthy news organizations. There are places online where you can interact with people in a trusting way. And we need to help them find those spaces.
Yes, Betty.
So I think also that if we want to continue this line of thinking, is that what is to be trusted, again, is more like an ecosystem and community, let's say, challenge and issue. And that's why it is, I think, important not to organize the public sphere into, let's say, good actors or malign actors or suspicious actors, those that are, but you know, the good ones and the bad ones, because I think this is where we perpetuating, I would say, a stereotype of our world, stereotyping our understanding. So I would go for this idea of organizing adventures, learning and experimental adventures where underage and adults from different backgrounds are joining to organize, let's say, a new approach to learning, a new experiment, a new policy, new approaches to media, new approaches to conversation. This playful, but at the same time collaborative approach with, I would say, unfamiliar and not so, I would say, not our tribe people, you know, to have different partners from different sectors, from different backgrounds, on a specific goal, on a specific mission, a specific venture, in a playful way with methodology. That's why I like this design thinking, human-centered approach. Well, our understandings, our feelings, our approaches are at the center of what we are doing, not just listening to the audience or what people say. I mean, this Ford approach ask the people. It's something from the past, the idea that we actually don't really value the public. I would say that because we value everyone, we can invite them in project teams, in whatever, to work together and to start discussing together and testing things together. Not everything will go fine. There will be failures and conflicts, and at the same time, we will keep the opportunities to work together. And I think this is what is more important to me as an approach for Gen Z underage, Gen Z adults, and for us as well, to keep this space, open space. Otherwise, MIL, as as a specific terrain, it will be always, focusing as a cluster, as a domain, not as something that is horizontal all over the society.
I think that
So this is what I'm trying to.
I think it's an optimistic way to end this webinar today, although also with Sherri Culver at the UNESCO MIL Alliance, we are trying to have horizontal and vertical directions to give to the media information literacy scene. And it is always challenging, but it is a way of having this inclusive character and the sustainability of knowledge societies. There is also one comment addressed to you, Betty, that Colin Marshall says that he is interested in what Betty is saying because of instances he has come across reports whereby children are sharing content such as CSAM on apps such as WhatsApp. So the sad part is that such content goes viral, but it's difficult to stop the spread due to the nature of the app that is being based on peer-to-peer file sharing. And this has to do with the encryption that you've mentioned already. And is it the job of the users or all the brands, the company themselves, to make it more a safe and
together? This is what I'm saying. This togetherness is the important thing. I have one example, if I can share it in a few moments. Two of my alumni, they organized a couple of months ago an initiative. They called it Rewire in Greece. Find your purpose, find your meaning, and they connected people of their age, I mean, in the mid-20s and a little bit older, in an event that was organized through digital and social media platform. In 1 week, 1,000 people participated, and they joined and they invited as their speakers and mentors and challengers. That is the interesting thing, from scientists to influencers or to controversial personalities all together. And I was asking them why you are mixing all this crowd. And they were telling, and so the event was hybrid. So they had metaverse decors and environments, and at the same time that had also real physical spaces. An absolute success. I was astonished. And they said, look, Betty, they told me, you think from your own perspective as a 50 whatever a year old. We as a generation, we don't distinguish the people between experts that are highly esteemed versus influencers versus pop science or whatever. We think with whom we can connect and get something which is of our value. So that's why we bring people that give us value. Some of them will come from very well-esteemed organizations, from science or brands or media. And at the same time, we will bring people that you consider them as the problem. For us, they come together. And we know how we can mix all those universes. So that was a completely different approach, because sometimes we try to, to make everything clean. No, not to mix.
Yes,
yes, clean. Everything should be cleaned, cleared. And they don't want things to be cleared. They want them to be mixed, really mixed. So they find values in people and circumstances and experiences that we may laugh at about them. And we can ask them why you have this person from World Health Organization and you have this influencer that is doing TikTok videos together. Because for us, they are together. They illuminate and they highlight things for us that they are meaningful and they can still interact. So that was a real life example for me, organized by people at Gen Z for Gen Z people, and they had a huge success, a great lesson for me.
Thank you so much for sharing with us these examples. So I don't know if Ivana wants to add something, but I have already noted down my closing line that we need an inclusive meta-media reality where the old and new generation meet, and MIL skills are the helping hand, the super force behind this inclusivity and this meta-media merge. So, okay. Thank you so much, Ivana. Yes.
For all the practitioners, yeah.
Yes, we have make sure to distribute it to our policymakers here in Greece too. So thank you very much for your time. I mean, this time it was a peculiar discussion, a generic discussion that was going from that way, that direction, another direction. It's the theme and Generation Z that have the range is so broad and it just makes sense. But I really enjoyed the discussion with you, the arguments, the disagreement, and the new pathways that you gave us and to our audience today. And for me, is the best way to end this EKOME MIL webinar series. It's the round 2 this year. We organized 8 webinars in total, all available from YouTube of EKOME. And we're really looking forward to keep in touch with you, with our global MIL community, and here at EKOME and with the speakers today. We're always available to any ideas, projects that you may have for the future in order to make a better, more kind, more humane world. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.